Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into something you requested, vitamin B12 deficiency. You sent over a YouTube video transcript, and I gotta say, I'm already intrigued. It's kind of eye-opening to think so many people might be at risk for B12 deficiency, even if they eat meat. So to help us unpack all of this, I have an expert joining us who can shed some light on the science and, what it all means for you.
Happy to be here.
All right, let's dive right in. So the transcript jumps right into the complexities of B12 absorption. And I always thought it was pretty simple. You eat food, your body takes what it needs, but apparently not so much.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit more involved than that. It's kind of like a relay race. There are a few points where things can go wrong.
A relay race. I
Okay.
like that analogy. So walk me through it. Where does this relay race begin, and what are the major hurdles we got to watch out for?
Okay, so picture this. You eat a meal with B12, right? In your stomach, hydrochloric acid and an enzyme called pepsin. They start working together to detach B12 from the protein it's bound to in the food. It's like freeing up a captive nutrient.
Okay, so the B12 is released. Where does it go from there?
Well, then it hitches a ride with a protein called intrinsic factor. An intrinsic factor is made in your stomach. Think of intrinsic factor as kind of like the VIP escort for B12, this dynamic duo. They travel together to the end of your small intestine, and that's where B12 is finally absorbed into your bloodstream.
Interesting. So are these hurdles you mentioned,
Hmm?
are those the points where this whole intricate process can get disrupted? Yeah.
Exactly. And the transcript highlights some common culprits. For example, if you have an H. pylori infection, well, that can actually damage the cells in your stomach that produce that hydrochloric acid and the intrinsic factor. And no VIP escort, no B12 absorption.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So that's why the transcript mentions things like antacids
Hmm.
and proton pump inhibitors as potential contributors to B12 deficiency. They kind of mess with stomach acid production, right?
Yeah, precisely. And that's where things can get kind of interesting, especially for a wider range of people, because even common medications like metformin, which is often prescribed for type 2 diabetes, well, that can interfere with B12 absorption too.
Oh, wow. No, that's a surprise. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
So if you're taking metformin, this is something you'll definitely want to discuss with your doctor. In fact, the transcript even mentions that the American Diabetes Association,
Hmm.
they now recommend regular B12 monitoring for patients on long-term metformin therapy.
It is becoming more recognized as a potential issue, yeah.
So it's not just medications, right?
Mm.
The transcript mentions that things like alcohol abuse and gastric bypass surgery can also impact B12 absorption.
Definitely.
It's kind of concerning to think that even if you're eating a diet rich in B12,
Yeah.
you might not be absorbing it properly because of these underlying factors.
Mm.
That's why this whole deficiency issue is so tricky to catch. Now, the transcript also challenges this conventional wisdom of avoiding red meat for heart health. It argues that it's actually a top source of bioavailable B12. What do you think about that?
It's a really fascinating perspective, and I think it highlights the importance of looking at the bigger picture when it comes to dietary advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've established that B12 deficiency can sneak up on you in a lot of ways.
Mm.
But what about the consequences? What happens if you're not getting enough?
Well, the classic symptom is fatigue, but B12 deficiency can actually manifest in a surprisingly wide range of ways.
Oh, really? So it's more than just feeling tired. What else should people be on the lookout for?
Well, think about neurological issues. Things like numbness and tingling in your hands and feet, difficulty walking, problems with balance. It can even impact your mental health, leading to depression, anxiety, brain fog, difficulty concentrating.
Wow. I had no idea the symptoms could be so varied and far-reaching.
And it doesn't stop there. You can also have hair loss, pale skin, a sore tongue that might be bright red, even digestive problems like constipation or diarrhea.
That's a pretty extensive list.
Yeah.
It really makes you realize just how vital B12 is for our overall health.
It really is. And that's why recognizing these potential warning signs and getting tested if you suspect a deficiency is so important.
Well, speaking of testing, the transcript emphasizes the importance of choosing the right test because it seems like a simple blood test might not always tell the whole story.
You're right, the standard serum B12 test, which measures B12 levels in your blood. Well, that can sometimes be misleading. The transcript explains this really well using the analogy of a folate trap.
Yes. I was hoping you would bring that up. That folate trap concept was a little bit confusing to me. Can you break it down in simpler terms?
Sure. Think of it like this. B12 is like a key that unlocks the potential of folate. Folate is another essential nutrient. And if you're deficient in B12, folate can actually do its job properly, even if you're consuming enough of it.
So even if you have plenty of folate in your system, it's essentially useless without enough B12 to activate it.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why testing for both B12 and folate levels is so important.
This is making me rethink how I view vitamin deficiencies in general. It's not just about getting enough of a particular nutrient. It's about understanding how these nutrients interact and work together in the body.
Absolutely. It's a very complex web of interactions, and B12 plays a really crucial role in a lot of those processes.
Okay, so if a simple blood test isn't always reliable, what are the more accurate ways to test for B12 deficiency? The transcript mentions something about functional markers.
Yes. Those are markers that kind of give us a deeper look at how your body is actually using B12. Two important ones are homocysteine and methylmalonic acid, or MMA. And if those levels are elevated, it could indicate a B12 deficiency, even if your serum B12 levels look normal.
So it's like looking for clues beyond just that surface level. What's also fascinating is the transcript even delves into the connection between B12 deficiency and some pretty serious health conditions like sarcopenia, multiple sclerosis, and ALS.
Yeah, it's amazing how far-reaching the effects of B12 deficiency can be. And while more research is definitely needed, there's growing evidence suggesting a link between B12 and those conditions.
This is definitely a lot to digest. But I'm already starting to see B12 in a whole new light. It's clearly a really vital nutrient that impacts our health in ways I never imagined.
It certainly is, and the deeper we dive into the research, the more fascinating it becomes.
Well, stay tuned, everyone. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue our deep dive into vitamin B12 deficiency and explore some of the ways to address it.
Yeah, it really does make you think about how interconnected our bodies are.
It does. So we talked about how to test for B12 deficiency, but how do we actually address it? The transcript dives into different types of B12 supplements and emphasizes that not all supplements are created equal.
Right, and that's a really crucial point. There are four main types of B12 supplements: cyanocobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, hydroxycobalamin, and methylcobalamin. And the transcript strongly advises against cyanocobalamin.
Oh, why is that? What makes the other forms better?
Well, cyanocobalamin is the cheapest and kind of the least effective form. Your body has to convert it into other forms of B12 before it can be used, and that's not always efficient. Plus, that conversion process produces a tiny amount of cyanide as a byproduct.
Cyanide. Even in small amounts, that doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, you're right. Although the amount is so minuscule that it's not actually harmful. But why settle for cyanocobalamin when you have superior forms available, right?
Yeah, good point. So what are the benefits of the other forms?
Well, adenosylcobalamin and hydroxycobalamin are both naturally occurring forms of B12, and they're generally well absorbed. Hydroxycobalamin is actually the form that's found in many foods, and your body can easily convert it to the active forms of B12 it needs.
Okay. And what about methylcobalamin? The transcript seemed to highlight that one as a top choice.
Yeah, you remembered that correctly. Methylcobalamin is one of the two coenzyme forms of B12 that's directly involved in those crucial metabolic processes,
Yeah.
including methylation that we were talking about earlier.
So if someone's looking for the most efficient way to boost their B12 levels, especially if they're concerned about methylation, methylcobalamin would be the way to go.
You got it. It's readily absorbed and utilized by the body. Now, the transcript also dives into the connection between B12 deficiency and a condition called sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia, that's a new one for me. What is that? And how is it linked to B12?
Well, sarcopenia is the fancy medical term for age-related muscle loss. It's a natural process that happens to all of us as we age, but it can be accelerated by various factors, including nutrient deficiencies.
So B12 plays a role in maintaining muscle mass as we get older.
Absolutely. B12 is essential for things like protein synthesis, nerve function, energy production, and red blood cell formation. And all of these processes are essential for healthy muscles.
Yeah, this is making me realize how important B12 is throughout our entire lifespan, not just as we get older. It's not just about preventing fatigue. It's about maintaining our physical vitality.
Exactly. And the transcript also mentions a potential link between B12 deficiency and some really serious neurological conditions like multiple sclerosis and ALS. This part was really interesting to me.
Me too. These are very complex conditions, and the exact role of B12 is still being researched. But the transcript suggests that a deficiency might actually worsen symptoms or even contribute to disease progression in some cases.
That's the current thinking, yeah. And some studies show that B12 supplementation could potentially help improve certain symptoms or even slow disease progression. which is pretty remarkable.
It is fascinating, isn't it? It seems like B12 deficiency may not be the cause of these conditions, but it could be an important piece of the puzzle. What I find really helpful about the transcript is it doesn't just present a bunch of scary information and leave us hanging. It offers some practical advice on how to prevent and address B12 deficiency.
It does. It really emphasizes the importance of getting enough B12 through your diet.
So red meat, poultry, fish, eggs, dairy, those are all good sources, right?
Exactly. And for people who follow a vegan or vegetarian diet, supplementation is really crucial.
And we've already talked about choosing the right type of supplement, with methylcobalamin being the preferred option. The transcript even mentions that therapeutic doses are often necessary to correct a deficiency, and that might be much higher than the recommended daily intake.
Right. And it emphasizes working with a healthcare professional to determine the right dosage, because it can really vary depending on the individual and the severity of the deficiency.
This is all so helpful. But the transcript doesn't stop there. It also touches on some lifestyle factors that can impact B12 status, like alcohol consumption.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The transcript explains that excessive alcohol consumption can damage the lining of your stomach,
All right.
and that can impair the production of intrinsic factor,
Right.
that VIPS score we were talking about.
Right. So it's not just about the B12 you consume, it's also about how well your body can actually absorb it.
Exactly. Alcohol can also interfere with B12 absorption in the intestines and even increase B12 excretion. It's kind of a triple whammy.
Oh, wow. The transcript also mentions stress as a module factor.
Stress. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It seems that when we're under chronic stress, our bodies might prioritize using D12 for other functions, which could potentially lead to a deficiency. It's like our body saying, hey, we need all hands on deck for this stress situation, even if it means sacrificing B12 for other processes.
Wow, that's amazing. It really highlights how interconnected our physical and mental health really are. It just keeps getting more complex. The transcript even delves into the connection between B12 and gut health.
Yeah, that was a fascinating part. It discusses the role of the gut microbiome, the trillions of microorganisms that live in our digestive tracts.
So are you saying that our gut bacteria can actually influence our B12 levels?
Exactly. Some gut bacteria can actually synthesize B12,
Hmm.
while others might compete with us for B12 absorption. It's this really delicate ecosystem in there, and it can have a big impact on our ability to utilize this essential nutrient.
This is blowing my mind. So having a healthy and diverse gut microbiome could be beneficial for B12 status.
It certainly seems that way. And it just adds another layer to the importance of taking care of our gut health through things like a balanced diet, probiotic-rich foods, and managing stress.
It all comes back to that holistic approach to well-being, doesn't it?
It really does.
You know what I appreciate about this transcript? It goes beyond just listing facts and figures. It really encourages us to think critically about our health and to make informed choices.
I agree. It really empowers us to become active participants in our own health journey rather than passive bystanders.
Yeah, it really does. After diving deep into this transcript with you, I'm realizing how much I took B12 for granted. It's more than just a vitamin. It's like a key player in so many vital functions.
Yeah, it's kind of an unsung hero in the world of nutrients, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And this transcript does a great job of highlighting its importance, even challenging some common assumptions. For example, it argues that red meat, especially grass-fed and finished, is a top source of bioavailable B12 and shouldn't be feared.
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking perspective. It encourages us to question that conventional wisdom and really look at the scientific evidence.
Exactly. And speaking of challenging assumptions, the transcript also addresses the concern about B12 toxicity, which seems to be a common worry.
Yeah, it really debunks that myth quite effectively. B12 is a water-soluble vitamin, meaning that any excess is easily flushed out by your kidneys. True B12 toxicity is incredibly rare.
That's reassuring to hear. So even if you supplement with B12, you're unlikely to reach dangerous levels.
Right, that's correct. However, the transcript does mention that some people might experience some mild side effects, like headaches or digestive upset with high doses, so it's always a good idea to pay attention to your body's signals and adjust your dosage accordingly.
That's sound advice for any supplement, really. Listen to your body and work with a healthcare professional to find what's right for you.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and helping us navigate this really complex topic. It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy exploring these intricate details of health and well-being.
Me too. And for you listening, we hope this deep dive has empowered you to take a more proactive approach to your B12 status. Remember, knowledge is power, so keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep advocating for your health. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, happy exploring.